Okay, what's going on? Vincent Rappisardi, Big Blue, Unbiased.com. Thank you to those who like, commented, and subscribed. I appreciate you guys. So there isn't much Giants news at this point in the offseason. The draft is over. The heart of free agency has passed us. There may be some late veteran free agent ads, but at this point, there's not too much going on in terms of just news. But there is something that I saw, an interesting chart, an interesting graph stat that I saw that I definitely want to tell you guys about. But first, we have a sponsor, Manscaped.com. 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code BBU. I was in Target the other day, and they recently released the Lawnmower 4.0. Okay, it's a ball trimmer, ball shaver. And I said, why would you buy it at Target when you can go to Manscaped.com and you can use that beautiful promo code BBU to get 20% off plus free shipping? Why wouldn't you do that? Not that you couldn't get that beautiful product at Target as well, but why not get 20% off? Why not get free shipping by just using a simple promo code? And Father's Day is quickly approaching, so this would be a pretty cool gift for your dad, for anyone who's a father in your family, whoever that may be. So 20% off plus free shipping. Promo code BBU at Manscaped.com. Okay, so let's get into some Giants talk. Like I said, there isn't much news, but there is an interesting graph, an interesting stat that I saw that I want to tell you guys about. So let's look at this graph. Pro Football Focus. Dave Gettleman and the Giants compiled the most expected net value via draft day trade since 2010. Now let me talk about Gettleman, and I don't want to be the person that's like, see, I told you, be patient with Gettleman, although I did say that many times. This platform specifically, YouTube, people were a little bit more understanding of Gettleman. There was a little bit more patience with him. Twitter, not so much. That's how it is. Twitter, there is not a huge, there's not much support for Gettleman. Maybe that's changed recently. I haven't really been on Twitter in months in terms of using it. I haven't used it since like January or February. But the support for Gettleman was not very good on that platform. But YouTube, I have noticed through comments basically, there has definitely been more support for Gettleman. There's been more support for him over time, over the past few years. Of course, there have been people who have disliked some of the things that he's done, and look, that's only natural. You shouldn't like every single thing that he does. You should question some of his moves. What I saw on Twitter with people rooting against him, which is weird. If that's your favorite team and that's the GM of your favorite team, I understand that you don't love him, but there was a weird, like, every time he made a move, people were kind of rooting against him, so hopefully he gets fired. I guess that was their objective. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But I do think that this is a very interesting chart. You look at the draft day trades. Obviously, they traded back in the first round. We all know about that, moving from 11 to 20, getting a first-round pick next year from the Bears and a fourth-round pick. Then they traded back in the second round from 42 to 50, and they got a third-round pick next year from Miami. They added some legitimate draft capital, and what's really interesting about this, too, is I really do think that this draft capital could potentially not even be used by Gettleman. I think this is kind of more of a Joe Judge draft capital kind of thing, because if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, I think Gettleman probably won't be the Giants GM next year, just because the quarterback is such an important part, unless they win like 10 games. Let's just say their defense is really good and they run the football well and they win 10 games, but Jones isn't very good, then maybe Gettleman does stay and they trade up for a quarterback. But the assets that they've accumulated really puts them in a great position to trade up for a quarterback if they really need to find their next franchise guy or potentially make a trade. If Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson was another name, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. We're still a year away from that, we would think. You never know. But you have to give credit where it's due. That has been the main thing that I've always talked about on this channel. Try and give credit where it's due. Give criticism where it's due. If someone didn't make the right move or didn't perform well, we're going to talk about it in an unbiased way. We're not going to say we love Gettleman and everything he does is amazing, and we're not going to say we hate Gettleman and everything he does is terrible. We're going to try and judge it objectively. If you read some of my stuff back in like 2018 on my website, I thought Gettleman did a terrible job, and I was very critical of him. But now I think he's really putting them in a great direction, and you see these draft day trades. So they were able to move back in the first round and still get an impact player in Kadarius Toney, but they're also able to put themselves in a great position next year with a bunch of quality draft assets. 2 first-round picks next year for a team that, look, the expectation is that they win like 10 games this year. The expectation is that they're in a situation where they're in the playoffs. That's what they should be doing this upcoming season, is they should be a playoff team. So let's say they do win 10 games. Let's say they do make the playoffs. Then they go into next year's drafts and they have 2 first-round picks and another third-round pick and another fourth-round pick. What more could you ask for? I mean, you're talking about you're in a really nice spot already. You're a winning team, and then you have extra draft picks, almost like you're a rebuilding team. That's something you would expect from a team that is rebuilding, that they would have all these extra draft picks because they traded quality players in order to add draft assets. He's put them in a really nice position. I know that there are still people out there that will never accept Gettleman as Giants GM. They don't like what he's done. They don't like the draft pick of Saquon Barkley. And look, fair enough. I understand that there's definitely, you could definitely ask a few questions about that pick. I think Barkley's a really good player. I think he's a playmaker in general. He's not just a traditional running back, which adds more value. He can catch the football very well. But I understand. I do. I get it. I understand the people that oppose the draft pick of Barkley, because they are going to be in an interesting spot when they have to pay him, especially after injury. But you got to give credit where it's due. And I think this chart that I just showed you guys, it just goes to show you the value that he was able to add on draft day. And that's not even talking about the players that he drafted. I think a lot of people like Kadarius Toney a lot. Azeez Ojulari was recently on Pro Football Focus's top 10 list of best player fits for the team that drafted that specific player. They think that Azeez Ojulari is a great fit for what the Giants are trying to do, and one of the best value picks of the second round. We've heard that a lot. Anywhere that you've looked, a lot of people love the draft pick of Azeez Ojulari in the second round, and they were able to move back and get a draft pick for next year and still take him at 50. This was a player that many thought would be a top 20, top 25 pick as long as he was healthy. So you're talking about really nice value. Aaron Robinson in the third round, another player who the expectation was kind of a second-round corner. So they got really nice value in terms of the players that they added, but they got really nice value in terms of the draft picks and the assets that they added for next season. And you got to look at it like this, too. Obviously, if you're going to draft a guy in the first round, you expect them to play a legitimate role in year one. But if you have 2 first-round picks, that also means that you likely have 2 people that are going to be under contract for 5 years and most likely at a pretty good price depending on how good they are. You're expecting a first-round pick to be a starter and to be a solid player. So if you can get a starter and solid player for 5 years, if you had the the fifth-year option, that's huge. Okay, that is huge that you can get a starter, a good player, and have him under roster control for 5 years. So that's another thing to understand. I remember talking about that about the DeAndre Baker draft pick. Obviously, it didn't work out. The whole thing, we know what happened. But they traded back into the first round to take DeAndre Baker, and he's probably a guy that they could have gotten in the second round. And I know the player didn't work out. I understand that, but I'm just talking about strategy here. But you trade back into the first round, and all of a sudden, you get a player that now you get an extra year of roster control. You get an extra year of a player who, at that point, you hope is a good quality player in year 4 or 5. So that's also something to take note with these trades, and something that could potentially add value in kind of Pro Football Focus's WAR, wins above replacement kind of system, and how they value the value of trades. Okay, so it's something to take take note. And I like Pro Football Focus in their analytics. I didn't like, they kind of went in like the hot take direction about a year or 2 ago, and it was kind of like, it was like watching like ESPN First Take or something. It was like garbage. I'm like, get out of this. Just stick to analytics. The analytics were good. The stats are good. I like that stuff. I like what they're doing here, and it's not just because it seems that it's good for Gettleman, but I do like their analytics in general. I don't really like their player grades too much because then it gets very subjective. I think that's what we kind of need to. That's kind of the point of this channel too, is to try and get away from the subjectiveness of everything. I try not to do too many film room videos because I do think it gets a little bit subjective at that point. Not that it can't add value. You may learn something about a player you didn't know before. But I try and stay with the numbers. I try and stay with the stats because it takes away it tries to take away my bias. Everyone has some sort of bias. I try and stay as unbiased as possible, but everyone does have a bias in some way, even in the slightest bit. When you use a lot of analytics, it really kind of takes away the bias. For the most part, as long as you really look into the numbers and you add context and you talk about things. And at the end of the day, I want to give you guys as much information as possible so you can make your own decisions.